Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a young lady that I had the pleasure of recently meeting. She has a powerful story to share. This young lady is a single mom turned national single mom, transformational speaker. She's a businesswoman. She's an entrepreneur. But most importantly, she is a woman of God, and she is seeking every opportunity, every platform that is made available to her to impact, to influence, to empower all that is within her reach. And she's taken time out of her busy schedule to be with us today. So I'm thankful so much for that. So without any further delay, let me introduce to you our guest today, Miss Kristy Angelee. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited about what's going to take place, our conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we jump into our segments for today, I do want to give the audience an opportunity to get to know a little bit about you. So if you would kind of tell us, a little bit about, who you are, what you do, where you're from. Just give them a little taste of who Kristy Angelee is all about.
Oh my goodness, that is a lot. I am a multifaceted person. I'm a single mom, of course, I have two teen boys whom I love with all my heart. And I'm, of course, a writer. I am a chef as well. So I live in Austin, Texas. I have been here for the last 8 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed the city, music, the food. I'm a foodie. All the things that we can do in Austin, Texas. I enjoy most of all is releasing God's word. Empowering, of course, single moms and any person that comes within my vicinity who's absent of hope and wanted to give up on life and don't know how to discover their purpose. And my job, I do believe, is to realign them with their purpose and help them to rediscover Jesus first of all as well, and their identity, and to encourage them to know that where they are is not where they're going to be forever, and this is just a stepping stone to their greater. I feel the anointing of God. I'm trying to tell you already, but so that's who I am. I enjoy, being in those spaces to be God's hands and feet to edify, exhort, and comfort all those that needs the love of God.
Awesome, awesome, and I love that so much. Like I said, when you and I first connected, you were actually in the process of being an upcoming guest on another podcast, and the host that I knew personally, and I've been on their show as well. And so when I saw that you were on there, and then what jumped out at me, of course, is the national single mom. Like you're the face of the single moms of the world, and I totally relate to that because coming up under a single mother and knowing that the close bond and relationship that I had with my mom, the times that we shared, the experiences that we went through, and how much God played a role in us being able to navigate through what we had to go through to just be able to to make it, especially in those difficult and challenging times. So this was easy. I mean, just the little bit I saw, and then I checked out your bio, and I'm like, oh yes, this is a perfect lined up situation that we need to make happen. And so I immediately reached out to you right away, hoping that I could get you on. And again, I'm so thankful that I was able to. And as you said, I'm super excited. The audience doesn't know, but we had a little technical difficulties before just to get things up and rolling. But I take that as a sign that we got some powerful stuff to share today, and that was just the enemy not wanting that message to be heard. But guess what? We're gonna make sure that it's heard today because I'm expecting to be blessed. I'm expecting the audience to be blessed, and I'm just very interested in hearing what your story is all about in your journey, and I'm sure it's going to be powerful and impactful. So again, thank you so much for being on. So with that said, when we talk about going through our life journeys, I'm always I say this on all of my shows, in order for us to really appreciate and get the full scope of a journey, you can only do so if you start first at the beginning, where it all originates. And that's exactly what we're going to do with you. So I want you to take a moment and just kind of reflect back to your childhood. And if you would, just kind of tell us, what was it like for you growing up? Any fond memories that come to mind when you think back to those times, as well as if there was some challenges even that may have crossed your path during that time. If that is applicable to you, please share that as well, so we can kind of get a full scope of where does this Kristy Angelee journey start from? Because I believe that beginning tells a whole lot about where it leads us ultimately into our callings that God has on our lives. So please do share with us what it was like for you growing up.
Of course, I had a beautiful, beautiful upbringing. Mom and dad in a home. We Christian based, so apostolic Pentecostal was my background of faith. Six of us, so with my parents, it was eight people living in a. I won't even say this. Well, I do want to say this in a two-bedroom home or three-bedroom home. I think it was three or two-bedroom home. But I say it was beautiful because the way they taught us about faith, even though we were on the other end of abundance, we were in poverty. We had the roof was leaking, floods, so water coming into the home. Lights and stuff turning off, but we didn't know that we were in poverty because of the love that my family, my mom and my dad had for us, and teaching us about faith and understanding our purpose and our identity, that our identity and our purpose doesn't come from these things, and so giving us that outlook, a different perspective, help us to overcome our challenges. I would say, I'll speak for myself, my challenge, and seeing, oh, I can't get the latest, bike or Barbie doll, or have eat the food that everyone else eating. We have to, go to the, welfare place to get, food and all these things. And even when coming around Christmas time, other people buying our Christmas toys so that we can have a Christmas. And so those are the childhood experiences. But I also know that in those moments I saw where God provided, where God stepped in. I can remember the time when my mom was sitting down on the porch and she was looking across. I'm from Mississippi, okay, so we have these weeds called kudzu, and so she was looking over there at the kudzu, and she just thought in her mind that she wanted some sweet potatoes because the kudzu looked like sweet potato vines. And so how later on she got a call from uh, my cousin, which would be her niece, saying that her mom, had just got a lot of sweet potatoes, and if she wanted sweet potatoes, and so she
Mm.
was just there thinking about it. So we've seen how God answered those prayers that were silent, and also us being in a having six siblings, learning how to be there one for the other. It was fussing, there was fighting, there was a lot of just trying to understand who we are and our family dynamics. I'm the only one that's my color. Okay. So everybody else is darker than me. So me being the only one that is my color, I had to face different, challenges even with that. I got talked about my skin color. I didn't like my skin color because I felt I didn't see myself like everybody else, and so that played on my confidence, that played on my self-esteem, even though I started to find other ways to cope with it. I started to, try to embrace it and find my strength. And my mom was there to help, find that strength. And, like, well, look at these, look at other, or you were created in this and you're beautiful. And even with the mole on my face, when I was growing up, I despised it because I didn't think it was beautiful. Everybody else didn't look like me. I didn't look like everyone else. A lot of people didn't know who my parents were because I looked like none of them, not even my siblings. And so it was like, here's Kristy right there out there on her own. And now who is she? What's her identity? What's her purpose? So I had to use all of those hardships, those stepping stones, those hard places to really understand that, I am Kristy. I am an ambitious person. I started my entrepreneur journey at the age of 5. I remember, doing dog walking services and lemonade stands, and, looking at my dad, who was an entrepreneur, and seeing how he would get up early in the mornings and go out in the heat. He was a logger, so forester. So how he would work all day and then come home and spend time with the children. Or there were days when things broke down, like his truck and A, B, and C, and he didn't have the necessary funds, the needed funds to make it happen because, his work really was dependent upon the weather. And so if there was bad weather, guess what? There were bad days for us to where we didn't have what we were in need of. But the love of God, I can remember, my mom would always have us doing Bible stories. So we dressed up as the characters, and we were able to pretend that we were back in those days and just, understand on a greater level who we are, who we were meant to be, and how these challenges did not defy who God has called us to be. And so that gave me my strength. They gave me my confidence. They gave me my faith. They gave me when I'm walking through, growing up, going to school, and looking at people and facing, maybe bullies. I didn't do bullies well. I was a fighter, so it was like, we are going to, and I'm always taking up for other people as well, because I just didn't like the fact that, how other people would treat people just because of their differences. And so I would stand up for other people, sort of what I'm doing now as a National Single Mom speaker, standing up for people. And so, but my upbringing gave me the ability to have my foundation, to get my feet, grounded in who I am. And so that's really, who Kristy is she's just a, product of a home that had the love of God, that's shared it with her children. I saw my dad, we would take anybody in the home. It was already a lot of us in the home, but when anybody else came in and didn't matter if they were alcoholics, drug abusers, whatever it was, he had that love for God that he would minister to them, and they got saved, and they received God, they changed their lives around. And so I got to experience, what evangelism was all about, and loving people where they were, and looking beyond. I'm like, that's who God is. He looks beyond our faults and he sees our needs. So I've learned how to give people unconditional love because my dad showed that towards us. He showed it what it looked like, when he would take other people in and give them a place to rest their heads.
That is a phenomenal story, and we're just getting started. I always love to hear about that closeness of family, especially when, like you said, financially things are not, the ideal situation and whatnot. But it's incredible that when you have that close knit family, a loving family, a family that, of course, also is rooted in God, that while those things that you may wish you would have had or had access to, it doesn't, in the big scheme of things, it doesn't really affect you in a negative way, because again, the presence of the love in the home and the presence of God in the home makes all the difference in the world. And then I love the fact that when you shared the story about the sweet potatoes, because it immediately clicked to me, when I my podcast, of course, it's entitled Blessings in the Streets. That's the name of my book. That was a saying that my mother used to use. And what you just spoke to is the epitome of what Blessings in the Streets is all about. When you encounter, whether it's random strangers or just unexpected circumstances where you have a desire for something or a need for something, and then without even thinking, all of a sudden there's this phone call, all of a sudden there's this moment of appearance where, okay, here it is. Your mom is just, I got a taste for sweet potatoes, and then boom, all of a sudden, oh, we have a whole bunch over here. If by chance you just happen to want some, well, one didn't know that the other was thinking about it, but then how does it happen? Now the world will say, oh, well, that was just luck. That was just by chance. But when you experience what that feels like and what that looks like, you immediately throw luck out the window and you say, no, that had nothing to do with luck, but it had everything to do with God, because that's just how he moves. That's how he blesses. That's how he covers you when you're in relationship with him. And when you are a family unit like you were, that just, again, you rest in him, you lean into him to understand that no matter what we got going on, no matter how tight things may be, we always know that everything was going to be okay. Yeah, you spoke about the roof. Yeah, we may have had a leaky roof, but for God, we had a roof over our head. We weren't out in the streets. We weren't homeless. We may not have always had, steak for dinner, but we had food in the house, so we didn't go hungry. We may not have had the fanciest designer clothes, and I don't know what that feels like. My mom made sure that I had clothes on my back, but they wasn't always a name brand, and you do get teased about stuff like that, but I was thankful for the fact that I had clean clothes on, and I was presentable, even if it didn't have some fancy name that I couldn't pronounce on the back of my pants or in the side of my shirt collar. It didn't matter because God provided just the same, and he made ways out of what appeared to be no way. And you grow up in those times, and you're like, and you hear people talk about that, like, I didn't even know. We knew that we didn't have everything, but it didn't feel like we were poor because, again, of the love and God's presence. So just sharing that just made me just, again, kind of go, and whenever I hear these type of stories, it automatically makes me go back and reflect on those moments in time, and just how wonderful it was during a time when community, a family just sticking together, coming together, looking out for other people outside of the home, where that was a thing that was normal. Whereas when you fast forward today, you don't see a lot of that as much as you used to. And then I also, just one other thing too, I love the fact that you talked about, it was, you were big on wanting to kind of stand up for people, look out for people, because you didn't like when people got messed with or picked on, just because they were different. And yet here you were, a person that was dealing with being treated different because you said, because of my lighter skin in comparison to my siblings. I didn't look like my family, or, or having a mold on my face and other people didn't. And you start to feel some kind of way about that, like as if it makes you less attractive or less appealing or accepting. And so for you to just, even at that young age, to personally be in that mode where you felt like the outsider, but yet had an unconditional love for people, to not, hey, I know what that feels like, and I don't want anybody else to feel that. So I'm I'm gonna look out for those people. And again, it's something that started, the seeds were already being planted in your younger years, and you carried it into your adult years, looking for opportunities and platforms to be able to, as I would say, kind of look out for that underdog, to be that advocate for that person who's oftentimes overlooked or forgotten about or tossed to the side because they had a situation or a circumstance like single parenthood, like, whatever scenario may have taken place, that, you kind of, depending upon who it is that's in the judgment seat, want to look down upon you, or look at them, look at what their situation is. Not acknowledging the fact that we all have our storms, we all have our stuff, but, with God in our lives, we can rest assured that everything is going to be all right. And I can already sense that from you in your mindset and in the works that you're doing. So I love the introduction of what your childhood was like. That's an awesome thing, and should be celebrated, and people need to recognize the power in that, and the love and God being present in your life growing up, how that starts the process of your journey, how it sets the tone and the foundation for what he's calling for you to do. That had to start from there. And that's why I like to talk about that beginning moments, to give people some true perspective. Like, this doesn't just happen overnight. It's a building process. It's a leveling up process. So that's wonderful stuff that you shared. So Kristy, as we move along in this journey, we move out of our childhood into adulthood, and we begin to experience other things in life that come our way. And as you know, and I can attest to this as well, you live long enough, and there's going to come a point in time where you begin to experience some things that are at a much higher level in terms of the adversity, in terms of the burden that comes with it. And so with that said, I would like for you, if you would, tell us about a time when you were faced with a challenging situation, a moment of adversity that it hit a little different. This wasn't just the normal, something I got to deal with, something random that I could, maybe throw some money at or make a phone call. This was something that it was hitting me to the point to where I began, even with your strong faith, began to wonder, how am I going to get through this? This is a bit much. I'm not this. I didn't sign up for this, but yet here I am facing this moment and feeling like I'm drowning. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. We obviously know that whatever this story is that you're about to share, you made a way through it because you're here to share it. But maybe at that time you had doubts, you had questions. So if you would kind of walk us through, what was that story like for you that you went through? walk us through that and tell us what was ultimately the moment that came about that allowed you to have that breakthrough to where you were able to come out of that storm still standing and not being destroyed by it.
Mhm. Of course, yeah. I'm just like my mind is going through so many different of those challenges, of those experiences, and trying to find one that really just coins it all. That just to sum it up, it is very hard because I faced, suicide. I faced moments, where I wanted to take my own life, and I think I'm going to go back a little bit, maybe teenage years, and then on up to my adult years as well, where I ended up putting a knife to my wrist to slit my wrist because of the weight of being one filled with the Holy Ghost at a young age, at an early age, young at 13 years old, and trying to navigate that journey. Trying to, Christy still has some things to work through her, and now having this relationship on my own with Christ, and that's a battle right there itself. And then having people, not in your corner, but seeming like, well, one of the things that someone said to me where you're supposed to be filled with the Holy Ghost and you're acting like this, not knowing that's a journey itself, that's a challenge itself, and made me feel as if I wasn't good enough, made me feel as if all my trying, wasn't amounting to anything. So I just like, well, that's for me not to be in this world, And so, but I thank God for how He kept my mind. He took me out of that mind frame. And so even moving on, into my 20s, I got married at the age of 21. So my teenage years was very short, of being an adult in that aspect or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that I could really, address it was during the marriage. I got married, at 21. And so having to deal with or face the challenges that I faced with, again, communication wasn't there like it needed to be there. There was the lack of God in the home, so we are both learning and we're both growing and learning how to be a husband and how to be a wife. But I think for me, because I grew up with that, I would say the perfect marriage. My mom, my dad was like the epitome of what a marriage should look like. And, every other person that I saw coming to them for counseling, and, not only were they, leaders in the church, but outside of that, it showed in their home. And so I felt like for myself that they had the perfect marriage, and I wanted my marriage to model that. And so getting into a marriage and wanted to have that same type of love and affection, and just, even if they did have their spats or whatever, they didn't do it in front of the children. They still, had the sanctity of marriage so that wouldn't be tarnished. And so in marriage, I did face, lack of finances, and started going into physical abuse and mental abuse and spiritual abuse. So these things that I had to endure or go through, but my mind was, because my mindset has always been an overcoming mind. So I've always had the perspective of there's always a way out. So I didn't sit in things too long, because I understood, even when I wanted to cut my wrist, I still, after that, I had to get myself back together and say, no, Kristy, you still have purpose, you still have a life to live. So I've always been the one to talk myself into a positive state, no matter how bad things are. And this is just something that's in me. I think this is how God built me. This is what He put into me. And so during the marriage, facing all of these challenges, my thing was that God, your word says, and I hear a lot of people say that He can heal a broken marriage. And I said, well, I'm going to see you heal a broken marriage. That was my, will for marriage, and my determination. And I know He was able to do it, but it still takes two parties. It still takes, the other person. If God sees that the other person is not doing, He's not going to keep you in anything that is going to be harmful or detrimental to you, if the person is not literally going to change. And so I stayed in that marriage because I had to ground myself in the Word of God. That's where my strength, that's where my hope come from. That's where my faith come from. And so I said to myself, God, at the end of the day, I want to see you be God in this marriage, because I I respect marriage because God ordained marriage, regardless of who I'm married to. It's a God. So I had to, buckle myself in to embrace the journey that I was getting ready to go through. It got really tough. It got really, scary. There was moments, when I was 8 months pregnant with my first son that I was, at my mom's house, and he came, and we just had a spat and everything. And so I went to church that night. I live like 20 minutes from my mom, 20-30 minutes from my mom. So I went to church, and so I'm 8 months pregnant, so I was tired, and we had an argument already, and so I wasn't coming back to the house. So he came to my mom's house, started an argument, all these things, and began to pull me off the bed by my legs. And so I am holding on, for dear life, trying not to hurt myself and not to hurt my child and all these things. So these were just moments where I had to really, buckle in and allow my faith to rise above the circumstances. So these challenges, and I didn't see how I was going to myself, I didn't see how these things I was going to come out of these things, right? I remember instances when we were at our own home, and these different type of situations would, escalate to where he would block me in the room and would let me out, and all these things, and I'm like, God, what am I going to do in these, circumstances? One, he was bigger than me. And so I had to, understand that, and that fighting my way out may not have been the best idea at that time, so I had to just really continue to pray in those moments. I really had, and I started talking to people. I started sharing, with my mom and what's going on, and my uncles and what's going on, and trying to get help for me to learn how to be the wife that I need to be, and watching my mouth. What just always, I don't put it off on the other person. Kristy, you got some things. What could you do better? Not as in I'm an unworthy person. No, but I just believe God. So in this, I have to learn how to make sure that I am doing everything that God is asking me to do, not based off of the other person. But I saw how God began to move things out of my way for me, and so where it came to where we ended in divorce. It wasn't the best of the situation to end a divorce how it ended, but it was the way that it was needed. And so in those moments of my darkness and those challenging times, even with regaining my strength and rediscovering who I am on another level, it's always going back to the word of God. It's always speaking, positive into my life, and reminding myself of who I am and what I am purposed on this earth to do.
Mm. Well, I want to first, of course, start off with thanking you for your transparency and sharing what you've shared. That can't be an easy story to tell. And I just think it's interesting. Just you started off the story speaking about having given your life to Christ at an early age, which is a wonderful thing. But then you talked about, in doing so, the overwhelming pressure that came with that. How do I, as a teenager, embrace what does this actually mean? Because and I was just actually having this conversation as recently as yesterday with a friend of mine that I had on the show, and we were just talking about how a lot of times people view giving their lives to Christ, which is a great thing, is an awesome thing, but sometimes people look at it as if it's the finish line, like, okay, I gave my life to Christ and that's it. Well, no, it's actually you're just getting started, and if you thought you were being attacked before, you're getting ready to face some battles that you've never seen before, because there's an enemy out there that is furious at the decision that you've made. So to be young like that, right, making such an important and critical decision in life, a great decision, but not knowing how to process all of that. And then if you're in the midst of a circle of friends and family and others that may not all be on that same page, that you're on that same journey, then you start to feel alone. You start to feel isolated. And in your scenario, it got to the point to where you actually contemplated taking your life for something that was saving your life spiritually. So it's kind of an enormous battle that you had to go through that. But I'm thankful to God, as I know you are, that he spoke to you in his own way of speaking to you and saying, what, hey, I know that this is a lot. I know you've made a big step, a big decision at such an early age. Just ride with me. Just trust in me. I'll get you through this. You don't have to go to this extreme and take your own life just because you feel, set apart and different, because guess what? You are set apart and different. You are. Everything that you're feeling is legit. You are different, and you need to know that you're different, and how you will live and how you will behave is different because of the decision that you made. But even in the midst of all of that, and the upcoming storms and battles that you're going to have before you, what the thing that you can rest in is that you're not going to have to face those alone. And so if you know that, then you're going to be good to go, no matter how tough, no matter how challenging it may get. I'm still with you. So just that on itself should let you know, to give you that reassurance that you're going to be okay. And clearly at some point you made that connection, and you were okay, and you said, hey, I'm gonna put this knife down and use it for eating purposes and not taking out my life, because God has some work for me to
Exactly.
do. And so that in itself is powerful. And then of course, transitioning into an abusive marriage, and, physically, emotionally, you talked about not being on the same page in terms of your faith. So, that it's a very real thing when we talk to, when the Bible speaks about being equally yoked. That's a real thing. If you're not on the same page spiritually, things like that are set to arise in a marriage. But I love the fact that you try to, instead of pointing fingers, and that's not to excuse any behavior that your ex may
Exactly.
have committed or whatever. I mean, anybody putting their hands on anybody, whether it's the husband to the wife or the wife to the husband, and it's not in a loving way, is wrong. But I love the fact that in respect and
Right.
honor of the marriage, you said, I know that there's something that I could do different or better on my end, and you allow God to work that out in you, versus you just going in and just saying, I'm gonna throw in the towel on this marriage. Let me get myself positioned and in right relationship with God as it pertains to my role in this. And and in the meantime, as you allowed yourself to be transparent and open to God for that reason, I think I truly believe that he covered and protected you in the meantime, as you were dealing with what was otherwise a
Yeah.
very difficult and challenging situation. And then eventually he opens up the door for you to exit this toxic situation, and you had to do so by divorce. And
Hmm.
like you said, it wasn't the ideal ending. Nobody goes into marriage with the hopes of someday getting divorced. No, that's not how it's set up. And if you've
Right.
ever anybody's ever gone through a divorce, I tell people, I've experienced divorce myself before. And I tell people all the time, it's not the traditional, I break up with you, I quit you, we don't go together anymore. That's not
Hmm.
that's not how it is. It hits a little different, and
Exactly.
it's a little
Yeah.
bit more to that. And it can be very draining. It can be very straining, even if there's no physical abuse involved. Just the whole tearing apart of that bond, because it's a different level of relationship. But again, I respect the fact that you allowed God to pour into you, to uh to give you what you needed to have on your end, to hold yourself accountable, and get whatever it was that God needed to pour into you, to be of the right mindset, and the right state of being, so that way you could properly process this situation, and of course, again, ultimately make your exit. And we talk about the that healing uh part of it, or as you said earlier, we talked about the people saying God can heal a broken marriage. Sometimes that healing, and the immediate analogy that came to mind was somebody who has to get an amputation. There's a part of this situation that's infected and it's diseased, and the only way to stop it is, sometimes I have to separate that which is diseased from the big picture. And so it's kind of like the same scenario. God doesn't love divorce. We know that. It's clear in the Bible. He does. That's not his choice. But he understands that sometimes the
Exactly.
healing that's necessary is an actual separation. He had to separate you from that otherwise, infected, toxic situation. But he wanted to first, before he separated you, let me make sure that you are made whole. So when this separation happens, you'll be able to handle it properly. Because again, as we just talked about, when you just sign those papers, it just doesn't just end and then you just go on with your life. There's a healing that goes on after that you deal with. That my marriage ended. This wasn't the plan. And then with you having come from a home where you had a chance to witness
Hmm.
the model of a quote unquote beautiful marriage, just the pressure in that, of, I wanted to live up to what my mother and father had, and here I am. It's not
Yeah.
playing out like that, and now
Yeah.
I'm splitting apart, and first I'm speaking for you, and please correct me if I'm talking out of turn, but I can only imagine that what that must have felt like,
Yeah.
and just even after it was all over, like, and perhaps you can even speak to that, like, how did you feel like when it was all said and done? Did you, how did you avoid or prevent yourself from staying in a moment where you started to, I don't know, if you felt like this, did you feel like you had failed, that you had let yourself down because the marriage didn't work out? How did you avoid not getting stuck in that mode again, especially in comparing it to what your parents had? How did you not get stuck and beat yourself up about that? Because people sometimes, when we make mistakes or things don't play out the way that you hope that they do, sometimes we can be, of all the people that need to offer forgiveness, we struggle the most with forgiving ourselves. And we beat
Mhm.
ourselves up about things that didn't play out the way that they needed to. So kind of speak to that, if you would. When it was all said and done, how did you process the ending of it to be able to actually move forward now that it officially was over?
Yeah, of course. So in it, because I was already doing everything that God was leading me to do. So once it ended, I didn't have any resentments. I didn't have a failure feeling. I felt like, okay, this was of God. And so I did everything. So I moved on in a peaceful manner. I
Mm-hmm.
moved on with no attachments to it, no hating that the divorce happened or the marriage ended. I moved on in peace because I did everything that I was supposed to, and I understood that that's a soul that needs to be saved. So I understood the God gives me a bird's eye view of things. He
Mm-hmm.
allows me to see things from, I guess, from His lens, so that I could be able to move into this next the way I need to move into it with my children, and teaching them and helping them to love regardless. Because when it ended, I was telling them, after we had to eventually we moved into a women's shelter. And so because it was bad, so we had to move into a women's shelter. And so even in that, I was letting them know, at the end of the day, that's still a soul that needs to be saved. So we don't talk bad. We show love whenever we see him. We haven't, but if ever we see him, we're still going to show love. I don't allow other people to come in and talk any type of negative into,
Mm.
about the marriage or about what he was doing or whatever. I blocked all of that, because in this home we are showing unconditional love. And so in this healing time, I had to make sure all the outside noise and the distractions that Jesus did when he had to go and heal someone, he had to put people out. If they didn't come with faith, if they didn't come with the right attitudes and with the right mind and in the right perspective. So that's what I had to do. I had to put everybody else out so that we can be able to heal. My children, I can be able to heal, especially my boys be able to heal, because they saw some of these things that were going on, especially the last end of the marriage. And so that's how I was able to, not have any guilt. I didn't feel guilty about it. I didn't feel like something died, or, like something has been lost. No, I felt the peace of God. I felt, okay, God, you allowed this, to take place, and now let's move to our next in a healthy manner. So what does healing looks like? What does it look like for us? So that looked like for us putting everybody else out, keeping, if someone came in to me with something about him or out, we're going to pray for him. That's what we're going to do.
Mm.
I kept it holy. I kept it, sanctified. I kept my atmosphere pure, because I knew that my children are on another level and they need to heal. And we don't need all of that coming in and causing the enemy to stir up even more ruckus.
And that is just so powerful what you just said, and I wanted to purposely ask that question because I think as people listen to this, and there's been a many of I know for a fact there's been many women who unfortunately have had to go through abusive marriages, and one of the questions that always comes up is, why didn't you leave, why would you stay? But what makes your scenario different is that while it was a dangerous situation, while you were clearly in a scenario where you could have, possibly, put your life in danger, or even perhaps even your children. And there would be some people who hear your story right
Mhm.
now that would feel some kind of way, like, you should have left out of there, girl, sooner, because this or that was going on. What about your kids? But it all goes back to you listening to God and saying and trusting God. Okay, you know what's going on here. You know that I'm in an abusive, physically, emotional situation. You know I have young children. We need to be protected, but I'm also
Yeah.
drawing from you that there's something that you need to make sure that I have in order so that when I do separate from this, I can do so just as you spoke of just now. I can do so without regrets. I can do so without hatred in my heart. I can do so not wishing anything horrible on this man's life or anything like that. I wish him the best. I pray for him. I pray for his soul. Um, I can do I even though you, as you stated, even though he hasn't doesn't appear to have been actively involved in your children's life since then, if he should show up right now, I
Mm-hmm.
receive and open the door for him to be
Yeah.
able to do that. I'm not putting in my kid's mind to hate
Yeah.
their father, or putting in or making it seem
Exactly.
like he, because this man could go out, he could give his life to Christ, he could be a whole changed person. Why would you deny him access to being able to perhaps heal and make amends with his children if he's doing so genuinely and authentically? And so I just love the process that you spoke to, and why even in a failing marriage, it's still important that you do things decent and in order as you transcend out of it. It's kind of the same
That's
way
it.
if you decide to leave a job. You may have a job that's not the
Mm-hmm.
best and not a great situation, but it's still appropriate, it's still cordial to give notice that you're leaving versus you just show, you just cut out and you just throw up everything in the air or whatever. There's still a way to do it. And I love the fact that you let yourself remain open to hearing God's voice and him speaking to you saying, Kristy, I know you need to get up out of here, but there is a way to do it. Let me prepare
Mm-hmm.
you so that way you can be of good peace of mind when this is finally over and be able to
That's it.
process it all. Because if you go out of this thing the wrong way, then you all messed up. And then I love you spoke to about I had to kill the noise. I don't let people come in and say anything about my ex-husband. I don't let them talk to my kids about
Mm-hmm.
that. We don't entertain that because people have their
Right.
opinions. Sometimes they're genuine. Sometimes they just want to have something. Nuh-uh, we're not doing that here. My situation was my situation.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out. It's unfortunate, but I'm at peace with it. Me and God and talk this through. That's all that needs to be said. I don't need your opinion, your thoughts, your input. We're not doing that. And I love that. And that's a message that many, unfortunately, divorced people, especially with kids, need to hear that. Like you, and that's really with any challenging situation. It's not always important to let people in or have a say in that. It's sometimes it just needs to be you and God to talk that through, and and it just be what it is. And you create that boundary. We're not going there. We're not bringing this up. We're not talking about it. It's not that I'm in denial about it or anything. I'm very well aware of what happened. I was there. I
Exactly.
was in it. We're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to speak. If I'm not speaking ill of him, why would I let you do it? If my kids aren't speaking ill of
Yeah.
them, why would I let you put that in their head? Or you know your daddy wasn't no good. No, we're not doing that. But we know that that kind of thing happens,
No.
and it's very damaging, and it ruins the opportunity for there to be any kind of reconciliation. And reconciliation doesn't always mean that mommy and daddy remarry, but just when there's kids about, there can be a hit.
Right.
People can still become friends again. People, children and their parent that was the product of a broken up marriage can
Mm-hmm.
still have a relationship. But if we're already putting up the barriers and the
Right.
and the restraints before the miracle happens, before the blessing
Yeah.
can happen, then that's not fair. That's not appropriate, and that's not of God. And so I love, and that's why I'm riding on that. I love the way you explain that, and it's such a powerful lesson to share. So I appreciate you sharing that, and in the way that you did that. That's very admirable of you, and very and more important, very godly of you. You clearly have allowed God to lead you accordingly in that regard, in what was otherwise one of your most difficult, challenging times in life. So appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
So
welcome.
when we talk about healing, as we've been talking about, I
Mm-hmm.
am curious to know from you, when you find yourself faced with adversity, and obviously talking about divorce or some other things, those are pretty big things, but we can go through adversity with some stuff that's at a much more milder level. But at the end of the day, adversity and challenges and difficult times is what they are, and they can be
Exactly.
annoying and frustrating and not the best timing or whatever. So what I'm curious to find out from you, Kristy, is when you are faced with challenging times and moments, what do you tend to do? What is your process that you like to do that works for you to help, stay level headed, clear minded as you work through whatever that challenge is that you're working through? What does the process look like for you?
Yeah, of course. Just recently we had our AC to go out twice, back to back. And so
Mm,
in Texas, it's hot.
right.
Okay, so having your AC to go out is not of God. It makes you that is like a challenge and the devil all in itself. And so
Hmm.
what I find myself doing in these type of milder, but yet uncomfortable situations, I am, analyzing myself. How am I going to respond? My response is everything, because what comes out of your mouth is what you're going to sow, and your seed that comes out of your mouth is what's going to plant, what's going to, bring forth harvest. So I'm very conscientious of what's coming out of my mouth. I'm very conscientious of how I am wanting to respond to challenges, because the word says in this life we will have trouble. So I take that and say, okay, God, if we're going to have trouble, He also gives us strategies. He also gives us principles. He also gives us tools, the wisdom to know how to endure, to go through. But it's up to us to listen and not respond to the way society wants us to respond to things. And so, again, blocking out what society says, and say, okay, Kristy, how do you want to respond to your AC going out? Now, when your AC goes out, then it plays with your money, because you already spent money, on the AC once before. And then if you're hot, it plays on your attitude. It plays on your emotions. It plays on how you respond, to other people. And so I have to say, Kristy, during these times, and I think I've done it so much to where it naturally just comes out of me. How do I want to respond? I want to respond still with the love of God, because it doesn't change. Just because I'm in a heated situation does not
Mm,
change God and His ability to keep me in perfect peace. Now I got to allow the Holy Spirit, like, Jesus, I can't do this by myself, so I need a little bit extra help because it's hot and I don't want to be hot. My children don't want to be hot. It's very practical that we face, that can cause a ripple effect of how we respond. But your response should never be based off your challenges. It should be based off of your morals, off of your values, how you want to see the end result play out, even if it doesn't play out that way. But at least I had a hand in making it, at least like a target, putting it in the right direction. And so in those moments, I have to really sit back. And then when I'm feeling overwhelmed with something, is it because I'm going before God, or, and doing things outside of His timing? Or am I, worrying or stressing? So I stop and think about, why am I feeling overwhelmed? And I say, oh, this is not for me to do in my own strength. So let me step back and let me allow God to, work things out the way He want to work things out. And so as I'm facing my different challenges and adversities and trials and tests and setbacks and upsets, I use that framework to say, Kristy, what seeds do you want to plant? Because your decision determines your destiny. And I am saying that this is the person I am, one of boldness, one of faith. So now faith got to rise. So if you have faith to know that things are going to work out and God is going to give you the answer, so you need to have faith in these small things, and not just on something big, not just something that's showy, but these things that behind, the small foxes can destroy the bigger things, right? And so understanding, like, these little things that's happening that come to mess up, like the enemy come to put his hand in, and I have to understand, oh, this is the reason why. Because he knows that something great is going to happen. And so he's trying to
hmm.
throw some monkey wrenches in there to throw me off my game. So I have to get a God perspective. No longer a Kristy perspective. Let's get a God perspective. Let's look at it from the spiritual aspect of things, of why circumstances happen. And so God's word says that I can speak to things. He said I can speak to stuff that they have ears. Look at how he invented the world. He spoke the sun, the moon, the birds, the trees. These things are, inanimate objects, but he spoke them into existence. So therefore, he said we could speak to mountains and trees and they have to listen to us. And so if he said that I have that same power, I have that same authority, I have that same dominion, then I use that. I use that over things. I use that. I went outside. I have a car, and I end up having a wreck in my car, and I'm looking to sell my car, and it's still been sitting there, and I'm like, okay, guys, people been asking about it. So last week, every now and then I go out there and I speak to the car. I literally open my mouth and I speak and I tell the car what's going to happen. And so I went outside the other day, maybe yesterday. I did go outside yesterday, and there was a note on the car that says, if you want to sell this vehicle, please contact me. You have to know how to speak to things when they in your challenging situations. Yeah, you gonna have me preaching in here, but you have to know how to speak to things. You have to know the power and the authority that you have, because you are to have a dominion over, not these challenges having dominion over you. That lets you know, okay, are you real with who you say you are? That helps you to, even your challenges. I have to look at them as, oh, this challenge is a step up for something else, something that I've been praying for, something that I've been asking for, a strength that I'm needing because I'm lacking in this area. So this is coming in order to build that muscle, in order to give me the capacity that I need for what I'm asking God for. So I deal with all of my challenges and all of my tests and trials from the word of God, from what he says that I can do and who he says that I am in him.
That's again, that's some powerful stuff right there, because you're speaking to how do I respond versus how do I react. I'm not reactive, because reactive is emotional. I'm in my feelings. It's about my response. And again, taking on a godly perspective, because I'm a firm believer that God will allow. First of all, the enemy can't do anything to you that God doesn't allow to happen. And so sometimes it doesn't always have to be something major and catastrophic. It could be something as annoying as my air conditioner is not working and it's hot outside, And so God will allow moments like that to happen, to just see, okay, what is Kristy's response? What is Joseph's response going to be on that? Because if he or she can't handle an air conditioning unit going out without losing their mind and freaking out and just all out of control, then what are they going to do when a real fight comes? Something way bigger. So he has to give us these moments of opportunity to say to us, look, if you can't handle this heat, you're definitely not going to be ready when the big stuff comes. And as you said earlier too, a lot of times these what we might refer to as these little annoyances, if you will, like my air going out or car trouble or something like that, they're typically, from the enemy standpoint, are meant to be distractions. They're meant to throw us off because there's something that's coming up that we may not be aware of, or perhaps we are aware of, and it's just the enemy's way of again trying to get you off your game, get you off balance, because he's upset, he's furious, he's disturbed by the fact that you're getting ready to get blessed, that you're getting ready to be equipped to be a blessing to somebody, and the enemy doesn't want that. And so little annoyances here and there. Anything that I can do, like you said, throw a monkey wrench in it to mess it all up, to get you off your game, get you distracted with the little stuff, can cause you to not be focused on the big picture of what it is that you need to be focused on. And so, but when you're in a relationship with God and you understand that, God has his way of directing us and showing us, hey, don't sweat that. What is, he, in your case, as you stated, he directs you back to the word. What did I tell you to do in situations like this? What has been my guidance for you to do in moments of these matters? Do you see anything in there that says panic? Do you see anything in there that says freak out, to worry, to stress? You think I'm gonna let you burn up and melt, you and your kids in the house? I'm gonna figure. I know this is a financial burden, but haven't I given you plenty of examples of where I took care of that before? So what makes you think that I'm not going to take care of this air conditioner? I know it's the second time, but what makes you think I'm not going to do that? And, what makes you think that we're not going to get that car sold? Don't you know I know you need to get that car sold? And I love the fact that your intentionality of, and I know some people may think it sounds crazy, but Sometimes to get what you need to get, you got to speak to that thing. You got to speak to that situation. So you're not crazy
Yeah,
speaking to that car. You said,
you
look,
do.
look here, car, you ain't gonna be here
Right.
long. I'm gonna need you to move because we got some things to do.
That's it.
And then again, going back to the whole blessings in the streets moment, was it by chance? Was it by
Mhm.
luck that a note is on your car saying to you after you did what you did,
Right.
speaking to that,
Exactly.
here's a note. How does that happen? Is it
Hmm.
luck? No,
Exactly.
it's not.
Hmm.
This is God responding to your
Right.
faith, to your belief, to your expecting him to deliver on his promise, which is, I got you. I'm taking care of you, Kristy.
Hmm.
I got you covered. I know what you need. I knew what you needed
Hmm.
before you knew what you needed. This is what I do.
Hmm.
And this is just one of many examples that I've shown you and still plan to show you to consistently remind you of that. So when you have
Hmm.
opportunities like being on platforms like this or being on bigger stages and conferences and things like that
Yeah.
that you are already doing, you'll be able to share that message with other people and it'll resonate with them. They'll get it because you've experienced it. You're not telling them something that you heard. You're telling them something that you know. You've experienced
Right.
it firsthand. So
Yeah.
awesome, awesome stuff there. So,
Yeah.
Kristy, if you had a chance to speak to the younger Kristy, the Kristy that,
Mm.
got married young, the Kristy who, you
Mhm.
know, gave her life to Christ young and was kind of overwhelmed by it all. The Kristy today, she's been through
Mhm.
some things. She's had some experiences. She's learned some lessons that probably could have been valuable early on had she known those back then. So if you had a chance to talk to her, or perhaps somebody who's like
Yeah.
who you were like back then, didn't really, you still trying to fill out your identity, trying to see where you fit in, all of those type of things that people go through
Mhm.
sometimes. What would be those words of wisdom that you would have to share to let that younger
My
version of
God.
Kristy or somebody of that nature know that you think would be of benefit and help to them to be able to navigate those challenging moments?
Of course. Yeah. I would definitely tell her, that she should show herself grace. Show herself grace during these times, during her growing up. One of the things that my mom told me when I got married was allow room for growth.
Mm,
And so, if I would have known that even more when I first got filled with the Holy Spirit, to allow room for growth, I thought I was supposed to already been like, you know, nothing touching me. I had my mindset, on fleek. I know the things of God, the Holy Spirit that's coming in and taking all of the, whatever's away. I don't feel anything. I am superwoman. But no, I have to learn how to show yourself, grace, give yourself room to grow, because you got to walk in this new identity now. You got to walk. You got to look, figure out or see. You got to merge the two. Like I tell single moms who are trying to figure out how to be a single mom and a single woman. You got to merge them together. You're going to be schizophrenic if you're trying to, live two separate lives. They both got to become one. They're all of it is you. All you're a single mom and you're a woman. So you embrace it all. So understanding that, to embrace it all, embrace you where every stage, every journey, embrace you, embrace how you sound, embrace how you think, embrace how you show up in a room, walk with your head up. And to my younger Kristy, I would tell her, when I get an idea or a thought, it is a God thought. It is a God idea. Just because, everybody is not doing it does not mean that I'm wrong, So continue to be outside the box. Continue to be that unique person. My identity and my purpose, all of me was created uniquely. And so embrace all of it. So to the younger person, who may be listening as well, to that single mom, who's still struggling with her identity, still trying to figure out how to make it all work, how to balance it all, how to find a harmony in it all. Rest in God. Rest in the story of Hagar when she was out in the wilderness. God came through. She wanted to separate herself from her child and her responsibilities because the weight of the world was on her shoulder. But listen, God hears your child's cry as well. He heard the cry of Ishmael. This was the second time she was out in the wilderness. But God did something so supernatural, that he opened up her eyes and she saw the well of resources there. So when you just surrender and give in and give up and stop fighting where you are and stop listening to everybody's perspective on,
Mm,
you're supposed to be like this because you're a single mom, you're supposed to be bitter, you're supposed to be hurt, you're supposed to fight with the guy, you're supposed to have resentment. This is all the world say. That's the world's wisdom. But God's wisdom is that he will keep you in perfect peace. I will give you, more than what you're in need of. I will be the father to the fatherless. He says that in Isaiah, I believe that he will be the husband to the woman. So he gives us all of these benefits in him. So change your perspective. Get a God's idea. Get a God's idea, and everything will be all right.
mm, well said. Well said. Those are definitely powerful words of wisdom, nuggets that I'm sure that there's a young lady that's watching this that's in the very situation that the younger Kristy used to be in, and you just said something to that person that's going to be life changing. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So, Kristy, before I let you go, here on the podcast, we want to make sure that we send you out on a high note. So this is our opportunity to love on you, to affirm you, to acknowledge you, to lift you up in prayer. Tell us what does Kristy have going on? Any exciting projects? Any recent accolades, anniversaries? Anything that we need to know about to celebrate you, to love on you, to connect with you? Please tell us what's in store for Kristy that everybody needs to be checked in and paying attention to and getting on board with.
Yeah, of course. God is doing something great for the single moms. He is taking the underdogs and he's putting them on top. He is taking those that were, borrowers, and he's making them lenders. And so be a part of what God is doing in this season. Say a prayer for a single mom. Say, reach your hands out, because you want to be a part of where the blessing is going. You want to be connected to who's been blessed. And so what I have going on is this next Wednesday, I have a webinar. It's a free webinar. It is called Unlock Abundance, Overcoming 7 Common Setbacks that keeps people or single moms in general from unlocking abundance. And we're going to take a deep dive into what abundance really is, not based off what the world says that abundance is. We're going to really look at it, from different angles, and give you tools and give you principles, give you strategies. I have freebies throughout the whole event that I'm going to be, handing out to people virtually. If you go and sign up now, I have my link and stuff up, everything. You can get a free mini download. It's already going to help you to unlock your abundance now. If you join the session on Wednesday at 9 a.m., you will at the end you will receive a free ebook that is 22 pages long, filled with nuggets, filled with resources, filled with success stories from other single moms who are in your shoes or who have been in your shoes. It's filled of unlocking your abundance even now. So you can check that out on my Facebook page. You can follow me on Kristy Angelee, and just on any social media platform, Chef Kristy Angelee on IG. I am on TikTok. I give more of I speak more on TikTok. So if you want to hear me speaking more on TikTok, you want to join me on TikTok, which is, I believe, the Kristy Angelee. I will share all that information as well. So those are the different things that I have coming up. I have a book out. It's called "What's Your I Can? Realize Your I Can in Purpose, Business, and Family." It shares, how God loves on a single mom, and how he empowers and equips, and it's filled with, again, resources and nuggets and principles, and a place where you can write in. I love writing in my book. So if you're a writer and like to write in the margin of your book, it has space for you to write in. It has space for you to unearth your hidden potential. It has prophetic decrees in there. It's loaded with richness. So you want to get that book off of Amazon, you can just type in my name, Kristy Angelee, and it will come up. And I have it in Kindle, and it's also, you can purchase it in soft copy as well. And just connect, because I'm always having a webinar, next speaking engagement, outings, podcast, and other, in-person events that I am a part of, that I would love to see you as well, and give you a hug, and just let you know that God is going to allow you to reclaim your life of abundance.
Well, that is absolutely fascinating. I'm excited for the work that you're doing. It's a very needed work and a very powerful work. You clearly are tapping into God's gifts and allowing Him to use you in a mighty way. And so, you know, continue to be that blessing. Continue to allow God to use you as He sees fit. And I know you're going to change many lives of single moms all over the world. And again, as I said at the top of the show, I'm a fan of single moms, having been a product of that household upbringing. You know, my book is, you know, was inspired by my mom and talking about what her journey was like as well. So anybody interested in that, Blessings in the Streets, feel free to visit blessingsinthestreets.com to get your copy of that. You will not be disappointed. So we're doing some great works out here. We're trying to empower, inspire, encourage people. And Kristy is a model example of what that looks like. And as you can see, she don't look like what she been through, but that's nothing but God to give the
Thank
credit
you.
to that. So with that said, Kristy, thank you so much for being on the show today. You've been such a blessing. I've been blessed. I know our listeners to this podcast episode are going to be blessed. So, and we talked about at the beginning with all of the challenges, it took us a good 30 minutes to get up and rolling. And I said to you then, I said, you must have a powerful story to share with all of this hustle and bustle and hassle that we're going through to try to just even get started. And I'm glad we didn't give up. We didn't throw in we didn't wave the white flag and we didn't throw in the towel. We said we're gonna make this happen. And but God, this is exactly what I expected and more. So you have exceeded all expectations in that regard, despite the enemy's fight to make sure that we wasn't going to have this happen. But guess what? It happened anyway, and it's going to be out there for everybody to check out at the appropriate time. So with that said, again, thank you so much. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed today's episode and the content that we've talked about and just the whole concept of the show in general, please subscribe, please like, please share, please comment. Tell all your friends and family about the Blessings in the Streets podcast because this is exactly what we do here. We, again, encourage, uplift, inspire using our own personal journeys, our own personal challenges and overwhelming moments, things that everybody goes through. But we put it all out there in our very rawest and transparent and authentic way, just so that you know that you're not alone in all of this and that there's a powerful God, a loving God that's there waiting, desiring to be in relationship with you and just wanting to guide you and lead you accordingly through life and just give you all that life has to offer and tap into those gifts that He created specifically for you that makes you uniquely and divinely special, to be able to be of service and to be of benefit to the masses of the world. So we're just grateful for this opportunity to be in the presence of Kristy today, and thank you for tuning in. And just remember, here at the Blessings in the Street podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, God bless. Take care of yourself. Keep fighting that good fight. Don't give up. Don't feel like you're in this thing by yourself. We have a God who loves you. You need to be connected with Him. If you're not already, get that relationship going. I promise it'll be the best decision that you'll ever make in your life. So until next time, take care of yourselves. I'll see you then.